According to the Centers for Disease Control, a recent study confirmed that autism and related disorders in the United States nearly doubled from 10 years ago, so that now we are seeing a prevalence of 1 in 252 girls and 1 in 54 boys. Parents of these children are enormously impacted by the needs of these children, and their health takes a toll on our federal budget in the way of healthcare costs and education costs. It behooves us to find out the causes and stamp them out. Will you support research in this area? And if it is found that environmental toxins are causing these problems, what will you do to industries that put these toxins in our air, water, and soil?
Well, first off, the research has been done. There are very competent professors of medicine who have done the research for years. We know it's the poisons in the environment that are causing these problems. We know this because the poisons in pesticides attack the proteins inside the insect's brain in the very same way they attack the proteins in our brain. We're just larger animals, and so it takes longer for these loads of poisons that we have to accumulate. And according to Professor Sanjay Gupta, who I mentioned earlier, the chief medical correspondent of CNN, in his documentary, he pointed out that over 85,000 of the most toxic chemicals and pesticides known to man were all made legal by chemical and oil industry lobbyists so that EPA could not regulate or investigate them. They were grandfathered in. That means things like gasoline. Just filling up your car, you're inhaling immense quantities of these very nasty poisons that cause cancer and dementia, not only in you, but your children. And we don't even give it a second thought. Diesel fuel is just as toxic, just as poisonous. We live in poison. Our homes are filled with it. It's under the kitchen sink.
So as president, what are you going to do about it?
As president, I'm first off going to put the majority of citizens in charge of making the final decision so that it's not something a single individual or a tiny number of members of Congress can do. This should be the majority of citizens, and this gets back to this education process. We talk about, well, people don't like regulations, but I don't think most Americans, I don't know any Americans that want corporations to poison us and our children with chemicals that take our brains apart and cause cancer. I don't think anybody's for that. Do you? If there are, stand up and be counted. You know, if you believe poisoning people with the worst poisons from the germ warfare era, known to man, should be legal. I'd like to know about that, because I don't think anybody that I know that's got half a brain and understands what poison does to your body and brain and tissue would tolerate it. It should be highly illegal. We should be putting these members of corporations in prison.
Okay.
They are worse than the Nazis. They have poisoned. Let me just explain something. People don't understand the laws of physics very well, but the most important law you need to know in this discussion is the law of diffusion. And that's like pouring cream into coffee. And anyone who's seen that reaction, you pour the cream in the coffee, it's a very fast reaction. It takes seconds before that diffuses the cream and the coffee. If you pour poison in that same cup, it diffuses just as rapidly because the laws of physics require it.
Okay.
And the earth is one large glass of water. You don't just put poison in one part of it and it stays there. It diffuses until it equalizes, and that's why it's in our blood now and in our brains. And you will not stop this epidemic of autism and dementia until you stop mass producing the trillion gallons of poison that we produce every year in this country.